This week, war in Israel, marathon record breaker, fast food outlet sued, and a very elderly skydiver.
Over here! Hey, listen up! Newsy! Newsy-paloozy!
Hello and welcome to Newsy Paloozy, the news pool for curious kids and adults. I'm your host, Alicia Shankar Brickett, and as ever, I'm joined by the Big Story Explainer and the Sound Effects Finder, otherwise known as my mama.
Also known as Lindy Brickett.
That too. So in world news this week, very upsetting news coming from the Middle East as Israel formally declares war against the militant group Hamas after its surprising bombardment of missiles this weekend. We'll dive into the long backstory of this troubled region to help you understand what's happening. We also have the latest in sports news with a Kenyan marathon runner shattering records. Fast food giants claim a victory as a case against them for false advertising is tossed out of court. And a centenarian jumps at the chance to become the oldest person to tandem skydive. Don't know those big words or what this crazy sentence means? Never fear, we'll tell you all in our final oddball story. Alright then, let's dive on in. First up, it's the
Big News Story
Of the week.
Well, we've all no doubt been hearing the disturbing news
and the horrible stories
coming out of the Middle East.
It started at the weekend when Hamas launched a surprising attack, firing thousands of rockets into Israel.
And it wasn't just military strikes. There was also a land and sea invasion of Israel, a terrorist attack on a music concert, and Israeli people being pulled from their homes and taken as hostages.
That's just horrible. Who is Hamas anyway?
Well, they're actually an Islamic militant and political group. But because it's armed resistance against Israel, which has included rocket attacks and suicide bombings for years, they're considered a terrorist organization by the United States and European Union.
But aren't they the political party voted to be in charge of the Palestinians?
Just one of the two Palestinian territories, a tiny slice of coastal land known as the Gaza Strip, which is surrounded by Israel. And since Israel considers Hamas terrorists too, well, back in 2005, they put up a blockade to prevent people from entering or exiting the Gaza Strip.
What? That sounds like they're imprisoned.
Well, that's what people say it feels like, yes. But it's complicated. It's a dispute that goes way back, like a few millennia. But we'll contain ourselves on this podcast to the last 130 years.
Whoa, like a time before cars and airplanes and social media and videos?
Exactly. So first, there began something called the Zionist movement.
Wait, Zion, like the old biblical name for Jerusalem?
That's right. It's considered the Jewish homeland. But for various reasons over the centuries, most Jews had moved away. Mostly because they were persecuted by anti-Semites.
Those are people who are hostile or prejudiced against Jewish people, right?
Correct, which is what was happening in Russia back in the 1880s when there were deadly anti-Semitic riots. So many Jews wanted to move back and claim Jerusalem as their homeland.
Wait, and that was the Zionist movement?
Yes, and it really gained momentum after World War II.
When Hitler and the Nazis tried to wipe out the Jews.
Right. So it's no wonder the Jewish people wanted a place they could call their own. And, well, guess who ruled the Jerusalem area at the time?
The Palestinians?
No, the Ottomans, which was the former Turkish Empire, and then the British were put in charge.
Boy, they sure did get around.
I know, right? And so after World War II and the mass killing or genocide of Jews, Britain said to the Zionists, sure, go to your homeland. There are these people called Palestinians living there already, but hey, we'll just divvy it up and they'll move to one side and you guys can move to the other side.
That doesn't sound like a recipe for a happy place.
And what do you think happened?
Neighborhood fights?
That's an understatement. War is what happened. Several of them, in fact. And now the Israelis have more landmass than the Palestinians, who are confined to the Gaza Strip, which we mentioned earlier, and another patch called the West Bank.
Whoa, so this anger and fighting for land goes way back.
It sure does. And to complicate things further, Jerusalem is seen as a holy place for Jews, Christians, and Muslims.
Tricky.
Tell me about it. And the Palestinians would prefer their territory to be their own country instead of part of Israel, and so have taken up weapons, guns, terror attacks, and suicide bombers to try and make that happen.
But it hasn't happened, has it?
Nope. Instead, Israel has gotten stronger, developing a massive military and building settlements on land the Palestinians say is theirs, but Israel say they have to for self-defense.
But I bet the Palestinians don't see it that way.
They sure don't. And so it goes on and on.
But still, attacking people at a music concert and kidnapping old people and kids, that's just horrible. And then the retaliation. There's no doubt happening for that. God, it's all so awful. Surely there's got to be another way.
Well, my dear, if you or anyone could think of a better way, you'd win the Nobel Peace Prize, because this is a mess that no one has been able to figure a way out of for well over 100 years.
And with Israel officially declaring war on Hamas in the Gaza Strip, it's gonna get worse before it gets better, I bet.
Sadly, I think you're right.
What's that? I'll tell you what. That's the halftime bell, which means it's time to hear what's making news around the rest of the world. Hold on tight. It's
Around the World in 80 Seconds.
Whoa, hold tight.
Afghanistan is reeling after a magnitude 6.3 earthquake hit the west side of the country. A rescue operation is underway, but so far more than 2,000 people have been killed. TikTok is in trouble in the U.S. state of Utah, which is suing the social media company for allegedly designing algorithms that harm children. State authorities say TikTok deliberately designed features to mimic a, quote, cruel slot machine that hooks kids' attention and does not let it go. More Nobel Prizes are given, including the prize for literature to a Norwegian writer, John Fawz, and the Peace Prize to Iranian activist Narges Mohammadi for her relentless fight against the oppression of women in Iran. And if you want to know more about the history of this prize, then do check out our episode 120. And scientists find 10 markers in blood that predicts people's chances of reaching the ripe old age of 100. The findings, published in the journal Geroscience, unveiled common biological markers, including things called cholesterol and glucose in people who lived past 90.
Well, thank you so much for that. Wait for it. That whoopity-boppity-zippity-zappity-rap. Oh, what's making headlines elsewhere in the world, Mama?
I hope somebody understood that. Anytime, Leela. Now, moving on to something a little tastier to talk about.
Or not, as the case might be.
Well, that's true. It's something we've all gone through, wanting the taco, burger, or fries shown on the menu at a fast food restaurant.
You know the ones, a big burger or a big burrito, glistening with cheese and fresh lettuce that look so crisp that you can't wait to sink your teeth into.
Yet.
When it arrives, it's some dinky, soggy version of the picture advertised. What's that called?
Disappointing?
That too, but mainly false advertising. And some people have had enough and taken some major fast food giants to court.
Only it hasn't gone very far, as their claims have gotten dismissed, as in tossed out of court.
For more on this consumer story, let's cut across to our food correspondent, Mirabelle Power.
Thanks, you guys. So people have been complaining about how a lot of fast food companies make their food look much better in their advertisements than in real life. In fact, this has its own word. It's known as puffery. You know, like to puff something up, to exaggerate it. Well, this has made one guy from New York so angry that he filed a lawsuit against the world-popular fast food chain McDonald's and one of its big rivals, Wendy's. You might call it petty, or should I say, patty, but he was serious. In his lawsuit, he said that the rival burger chains use, and I quote, unfair and deceptive trade practices, making their burgers look 15 to 20% bigger on their menu than their actual size. A lawsuit, by the way, is basically when someone brings something to the attention of a court, like a public issue or a personal complaint, so a judge can decide if someone's done something wrong. Well, bad news for consumers. The judge dismissed the case, saying a reasonable customer wouldn't likely be misled by the photos and that they were no different than other companies' images. But that's not stopping other consumers pursuing similar cases. Taco Bell is being sued for $5 million because a Mexican pizza supposedly had less than half of the beef and beans it advertised. That'll be an expensive pizza if Taco Bell loses the case. In Florida, I'm Mira Power, reporting for Newsy Paloozy.
Thanks so much for that story, Mirabelle. I want Taco Bell.
I'm getting hungry too, but we gotta manage our expectations. Might not look like the picture.
Yeah, I don't really want a soggy one.
Are we ready to play ball?
Sports news!
Big news in the world of running this week.
Yep, Kenyan marathon runner Kelvin Kiptum shattered a world record in Chicago this past weekend.
And when we say shattered, we're talking running 26.2 miles, or 35 kilometers, in almost 2 hours flat.
Yep, 2 hours and 35 seconds to be exact. To put this into perspective, most treadmills don't actually go as fast as this man ran for 2 hours straight.
So we're talking fast.
Whoosh!
And he's in a long line of Kenyan marathon runners who've broken records. How do they do it?
Well, that's what everyone in the world is asking. Could it be the latest technology and design and shoes giving them this edge?
Or the fact that they come from a high-altitude place in Kenya, which is really hard to run in. So then running almost anywhere else is a piece of cake.
Or was it even that kids from that area often walk and run barefoot to school, and that's what's helped strengthen the lower parts of their leg? Or maybe just a determination to break out of a poor community and be a world-leading athlete that gives these Kenyans the edge? Is that it?
Well, whatever it is, it's working.
And now the running world is abuzz, thinking that an even more massive running record, running a marathon in under 2 hours,
So just shaving 35 seconds off Kiptum's run.
could just be around the corner.
And finally, let's see what the Lucky Dip machine has for us this week.
Step right up.
Step right up.
Have a go at the Lucky Dip machine.
The Lucky Dip machine.
What's it going to do today, eh?
An oddball, no doubt.
An oddball, no doubt.
Well, this story is about proving age is just a number.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree more.
At least that's what an older woman, a bit older than you, Mama, from Chicago in the US thinks.
Oi!
Dorothy Hoffner left her walker behind. You know, those double-leg walking sticks that people use to hold on to shuffle about. Well, she ditched her walker to skydive.
Excuse me?
You know, jumping out of a plane.
Right, as you do. You certainly don't need a walker for that.
Correct. Nor is there an age limit. Oh no. Dorothy Hoffner is no ordinary elderly woman. For a start, she's a centenarian.
No way.
Yes, way. And in case you don't know what that is, it's a person who's 100 years or more old.
Wowzers.
This isn't her first skydive either. She did it on her 100th birthday.
That's a way to celebrate turning a century, hence the name centenarian, like.
Exactly. But that dive wasn't enough, as Dorothy wanted to be in the Guinness Book of World Records. And there's already a centenarian on record, a 103-year-old Swedish woman. Of course, these are tandem jumps. That means that two people, or pieces of equipment, that work together to achieve the same result. Like a tandem bicycle. That's for two cyclists.
Got it. But still, that's no less impressive, is it?
Tell me about it. She also said she wanted to do it again, because this time she didn't want to be pushed out of the plane. She wanted to take the lead on the jump.
Man, that's exactly the kind of centenarian I want to be, let me tell you.
Well, you'll have to live past 104 if you want to break Dorothy's record. Not long to go, though.
Ha ha ha. Very funny.
And it's time to wrap up the podcast with the top 5 facts heard today. Fab fact number 1.
Israel wages war on Hamas after the political and militant group bombarded it with missiles and terror attacks. Which of the 2 Palestinian territories was Hamas elected to run? The Gaza Strip.
Fab fact number 2.
The Zionist movement started in the 1880s with the idea to settle Jews in the area they consider their homeland. What does Zion mean? It's the biblical name for Jerusalem, which is considered the Jewish homeland.
Fab fact number 3.
Fast food giants claim a victory as a case against them for false advertising is tossed out of court. What's the word for making items for sale, like food, look much better in their advertisements than in reality? Puffery.
Fab fact number 4.
A centenarian woman from the US jumps at the chance of becoming the oldest person to tandem skydive. What does tandem mean? 2 people or a piece of equipment that works together to achieve the same result, like a tandem bicycle.
Fab fact number 5.
And how old is a centenarian? A person who is 100 years or more old. If you're an educator and you want to test your kids' listening skills, then have a look at our quiz online. Go to the Lucky Dip page of our website, newsypooloozy.com. That's Pooloozy, Pooloozi, and let the kids take this quiz online or surprise them with an in-class pop quiz.
And that almost brings us to the end of this episode of Newsy Paloozy. But we did want to leave you with something a little gentle during this tough news week.
Yes, we want to help you sleep well at night with some gentle and inspirational bedtime stories from our Kids Listen friends, the Story Pillar podcast.
Do you like stories and learning about new places? For this story, we have to travel to Meghalaya. How about being silly?
I don't want your butt germs.
And when something tough happens, maybe with a friend, could you use some advice?
I can do that if I want, because I'm not hurting you. I'm not being mean.
Then check out Story Pillar, a podcast where we tackle sticky situations, hear stories from all over the world, and pick up tips from you, our listeners. More info at storypillar.com.
If you enjoyed this dip in the coolest pool of news and information, then hit that subscribe button on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Alexa, or wherever you get your podcasts.
While you're at it, give us a good rating. Or better still, leave us a review. Go on, we'll read it out loud if you do.
All right then, see you next week in the happy, splashy, newsy paloozy.